the equal opportunity is a thing that must be shared and spread in order to build a strong city.
Antonio Maceo Smith was an educator and entrepreneur, but most importantly, a civil rights pioneer for Dallas. He was born in 1903 in Texarkana. After high school, he attended the historically black college, Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. After graduating in 1924, he went on to get his MBA at New York University and his master's at Columbia. Smith started his career running an advertising agency in New York before heading home to Texarkana to run a real estate firm. In 1932, he moved to Dallas to teach in the segregated Dallas public schools and also publish a weekly black newspaper, the Dallas Express. Early on, Smith noticed a clear distinction in his job search.
There were white folks' jobs and there were black folks' jobs. Desk jobs, white folks' jobs.
The following year, Smith joined the Dallas Negro Chamber of Commerce, creating voter registration drives. He also became deputy director of the Hall of Negro Life at the Texas Centennial Exposition in 1936. Smith was also a leader in the Texas Council of Negro Organizations, Dallas NAACP, and the Alpha Sigma Lambda chapter of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Smith believed it was important to fight for integration while still remaining involved where you could.
Participation. You got to start somewhere. You can't start on an integrated pattern. Start and then integrate.
In 1944, Smith worked closely with the legal team of the NAACP on the voting rights lawsuit Smith versus Allwright, which got rid of white primaries across the nation. He also fought against school segregation in the Sweatt versus Painter lawsuit, a case that ended educational segregation in Texas and paved the way for Brown versus Board of Education. Smith went on to play an integral role in the desegregation of public facilities and schools in Dallas. Smith passed away in Dallas on December 19, 1977, at the age of 74. In South Dallas, you will find the Barack Obama Male Leadership Academy at A. Maceo Smith. Inside, you can see Smith's imagery and words through the hallways. There's a reason many Texans gave Smith the nicknames Mr. Civil Rights and Mr. Organization. He fought for equal rights and encouraged others to do so in whatever way they could. He left behind a Dallas legacy that should never be forgotten.
I think the beginning of lifting the sights of minorities to a point where that if democracy is to survive, it must involve all people. This is a part of the definitive area of democracy where the people have something to do with it.